Hey guys, hope you stayed with me for all three parts of this video and close up chapter 9 here with two cross multiply problems. So why are the two problems down at the bottom cross multiply problems when the other ones weren't? How many fractions do you see? I see one on either side. That means you can cross multiply those. All right, so off we go. Good news for number 5. Part 1 or step 1 in the directions to determine the restrictions. Do you guys see any variables on the bottom? I do not, therefore there are no restrictions. So we're not talking about the top. Do not tell me 4, do not tell me -1. So literally no restrictions. Well, okay, if I can't do step 1, I move on to step 2. And step 2 is to solve the problem as if it were an equation. So cross multiply. Here we go. I get 8n plus 8, little distributive property. I got 5n minus 20, a little more distributive property. Solve like normal. Let's see here. How do we get the 5n to the other side? We subtract it. How can I move the positive 8 over? Subtract it. How do I get rid of the 3? I divide it. All right, now if you go and actually pick up a calculator and do 28 divided by 3, you get a crazy decimal. It goes on forever. So nothing wrong with fractions for answers. Let's leave that guy. Well, we did a problem in the last video in which there were no solutions, but you had to still do a number line with the restrictions. This time there's no restrictions, but we did get a solution. So any way you look at it, you need to do a number line. Well, what number can I test? I could test anything. The question is, do you want to test a negative or do you want to test a positive? I'm going to test something over on this side. In fact, I'm going to test 0 because it's the easiest number of all to test. Back to the original problem we go. I'll squeeze this over here on this side. It said n minus 4, plugging in a 0 over 8. It said less than. It said n plus 1, but I'm plugging in a 0 over 5. So here's what I got to find out. Is negative 4/8 less than 1/5? And here's a big surprise. It ends up being true. I swear to you, you can get false. In fact, I will prove that to you on number 6. But this guy, a negative, is in fact less than a positive. So true. If that one's true, it goes back and forth. That guy's got to be false. So let's figure out, where did we get the negative 28 over 3 from? We got it from the original problem. And even though I crossed it off, and I apologize for that, look back up here. The original problem had a less than without an equal sign underneath it. Now remember, negative 28 thirds was not a restriction, but if it had been, I would have gone with an open circle because restrictions always get open circles. Shade where the trues are, and write me a solution set that represents that shade. Brackets for closed-in circles. I don't have a closed-in circle. My shade goes from negative 28 thirds to the right forever. Infinity. Infinity always gets the parenthesis. So there's number 5. Let's move on to number 6, the last problem from this section. All right, guys, step 1, determine the restrictions. This time there is an m on the bottom. So if I was to literally put 0, where that m is, I would have 0 on the bottom, therefore a restriction. So m can't equal 0. So keep in mind, that guy's going to get an open circle on my number line. So maybe that's a good idea to do this right away as soon as you do your number line. Step 2, solve the problem as if it were an equation. So I'm going to cross multiply. Cross multiply one way, I get 4m squared. Quadratic equation. Let's see if you guys remember what to do with those. Cross multiply the other way. Distributive property, 3 times 15 is 45. Sorry about my ugly 45. Continue. We've got to solve this guy. Quadratic equations, chapter 5, if you have to go back. We always want to have 0 on the end of those. Moving the 3m over. Moving the 45 over. If you have a quad program, if you have a graphing calculator and you're in Honors Algebra 2, you could run your quad program here, guys, so feel free to skip this step. If you are not in Honors Algebra 2 and do not have a program that does it for you, finish my sentence, guys. When in doubt, That's right. Factor it out. So this guy, a little more difficult to factor. Anytime you have a number out in front here, these are the ones that we had to just kind of trial and error it until we got the right combination. So I'm going to cut to the chase. And I'm going to tell you it requires a 4m and an m to get this guy. It requires a minus 15 times a plus 3. So that one wouldn't have been the easiest ever to try to figure out, but trial and error. But if you had a graphing calculator program, life was easy there. So what do we got for an answer? We got 15 over 4. You can go decimal if you want. And we got negative 3. So this is going to make an interesting number line because we have 1, 2 answers, and we have a restriction. So this is going to be the first number line that we've done that has 3 things on it. All right, well, not impossible. 3 things it is. 1, 2, 3. So I have a negative 3. Got to put them in the right order. I got a 0 for my restriction. I got 15 over 4 for my answer. So maybe it is a good idea. Let's do this. I'm going to go ahead and establish the fact that the 0 was a restriction. Now, where did we get the 15/4 and a negative 3 from? We got them from the original problem, and the original problem did have an equal sign underneath. It said greater than or equal to. So these guys, we get closed circles. All right, well, 15 over 4, let's see, that's 3.75. So just to prove to you, you can get a false answer, I'm going to test the number 4. So remember, when you test your number line, you can test any number you want. Probably positive 1 would have been easier to test there, but let's just go ahead and test 4 just for kicks. So original problem said m plus 15. So I got a 4 in there. Over m, I got a 4 in there. Greater than or equal to 4m, I got a 4 in there. Over 3. So that makes 19/4 greater than or equal to 16/3. So you could test that. Use some decimals there. And believe it or not, we would find out that 19 over 4 is not bigger than 16 over 3. And we finally get a false answer. So down here on my number line, this area was false. For our purposes, we get to go back and forth. I did it again. I don't know why I'm doing it. I usually put my falses down below and my trues up above. Like I said, no particular reason. Back and forth. Shade where the trues are. Here's one section that got a true. Here's another section that got a true. So all I have to do is mathematically represent or show where the shade is. Well, the shade goes clear to the left forever, negative infinity, comma, up to negative 3. So details, right? There's always details when we do these problems. Negative 3 had a closed circle. Closed circles get brackets. Then I got a gap, which means I have a union and another answer to give you. And this guy was shaded from 0, which does not have a closed-in circle, all the way up to 15/4. So I'm going to go decimal just for the heck of it. You didn't have to. 15/4 is the same thing as 3.75, but it had a closed-in circle. But that does cover the shade. This area represents the shade that's clear to the left. This is the one that represents the shade that's in between, and that's where all the true answers were. And that brings us to the conclusion of Chapter 9, Section 5 videos. Hey, as always, thank you so much for watching.